I rebuilt this vaporizer or converter, and I just want to bench test it now. So what I did here was I put a couple of balloons on where the water from the engine goes to check if there's any air coming out of here when we put pressure on it. And this here is the part, the vapor outlet that goes into the engine. And this is the main solenoid. It's a valve that opens the main propane. Propane comes down here. But right now I've got this hooked up to the air compressor, and I'm just going to bench test it with air. So I've got propane air coming into it. This is the main switch here, or the main valve, and this is the idle valve here. And these two are adjusting. This one here adjusted the balance, the air balance, and this one adjusts the idle. But we're not going to adjust this now. We'll adjust these two when we put it on the engine. What I wanted to do is make sure that when we got air put into here, that it doesn't, when the valves are off, so it doesn't come out of the here or out of here. So I put some balloons on here to make sure that everything will be working. And this is just a vacuum switch here, but I just disconnected it now just to bench test it. And I put a little hose on this vent, the atmospheric vent here, to do some testing too. So what we're going to do first is I'm going to hook the 12-volt battery up to it. Then I'm going to activate the main switch. And if you activate the main switch, there should be no air coming into these or these. Then, so right now I've got the idle switch shut off, or the idle valve shut off. So we're going to start off by activating this, and if there's no air coming out of here or here or here, then we're good to go. Then what I'm going to do is activate this idle one, and when you activate the idle one, air should be coming out of here. But okay, so now I've got air pressure in the system. I'm going to test it out just like that first. I'm going to disconnect this idle valve, this idle solenoid. I'm going to disconnect it, and we're just going to turn on the main one. And I'll put 12 volts. I'll put 12 volts to the put a ground here. Now if I put 12 volts to this solenoid, there should be no air coming out from out of here or from the vapor one. There should be no air coming out. There, it's activated, it's energized, and everything seems to be okay. Now for the second test, I'm going to turn on the idle solenoid. And there should be air coming out of this one here. I have to plug it in here. There you go. But there's no air coming out of here because this is where the water circulates to keep this warm. So that's a good sign. Now, while this is on, if I blow into this atmospheric vent here, you should see a difference of volume coming out of here. Now, while this is on, if I blow into this atmospheric vent here, you should see a difference of volume coming out of here. I don't know if you could see it, but I could tell that every time I blew a little bit, there was a difference in this. So that's good. That's working. Now, I'm going to just put some water and soap around here to make sure that there's no leaks, because I had rebuilt this and I'm just wondering if I did a good job, because that's the first one I've ever done. I'll disconnect this idle circuit. And I'll just turn on the main valve and I'll check around here for leaks. And while we have just the main valve on, there should be no air coming out of here or any place. So that looks good. So when I put power to this main solenoid, it opens the main valve. Propane goes inside this first part here, but not supposed to go into here. So this is where the propane comes out to the engine. So I tested it and there's no air coming into here when this one here is on. So that's good. Also, there's not supposed to be any air coming out of here, because this is where the water is hooked up. The antifreeze, the engine coolant. And now this is the idle solenoid, which I had disconnected. And then when I connected it up, air came out of here, which is a good thing, but it still never came out of here, which is another good thing. And there's no leaks on the seams here. I checked it all over, so that looks like it's pretty good. Now this is just a vent, but that checks out pretty good. Now this is a vacuum switch, also an electrical switch. So when you crank the engine over, the vacuum turns on this electrical switch, which energizes these solenoids, which starts letting the propane in. So you have to have enough vacuum in the engine to turn this on so that it turns on so it gets propane so it can start. So far I think that's that. That seems to be working okay. So now I think it passes the bench test. So now we can install it. And I'll have to check if this vacuum switch is working too. And then we're going to see if the engine starts. And if it does, we'll have to adjust these here too. These two, we'll have to adjust these two. And then there's one adjustment right on this line. There's one adjustment on this line that goes to the carburetor, to the air intake.